Marine One disturbing another English pastoral scene as the nervous hosts looked on. Buttered up royally last night at Windsor Castle, Keir Starmer hopes all this could make him open to Britain's attempts to shift him on trade, on Russia and much else. The country air was heavy with the smell of helicopter kerosene as his monster convoy crawled the 100 yards to the front door. Keir Starmer twice reached across to clutch his wife's hand before leading Donald Trump in for 90 minutes of talks. One of Number 10's top priorities for these talks was trying to get Donald Trump to harden his line against President Putin. And when it came to the press conference in the Great Hall that they'd toured earlier, some in government thought they'd got what sounded like progress.
Well, he has let me down. I mean, he's killing many people, and he's losing more people than he's killing. I mean, frankly, the Russian soldiers are being killed at a higher rate than the Ukrainian soldiers. But, yeah, he said, let me down. I don't like to see.
The president called a succession of favoured right-wing American media outlets. Fox News accused Keir Starmer of sneakily timing his announcement, expected this weekend, recognising the Palestinian state, to come just as President Trump leaves town.
Prime Minister Starmer, if you feel so strongly about officially recognizing Palestine for statehood, why are you waiting for President Trump to leave the country? Why can't you just do it right now? And isn't there a risk in rewarding Hamas with that?
Well, let me be really clear about Hamas. They're a terrorist organisation who can have no part in any future governance in Palestine. And what happened on October the 7th was the worst attack since the Holocaust. I made my position clear at the end of July as to the timing, which has got nothing to do with this state visit, and I've discussed it with the President, as you would expect amongst two leaders who respect each other and like each other and want to bring about a better solution.
I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
In truth, not that few, but Keir Starmer decided early on that he would try to work on President Trump in private on certain topics and stay silent for diatribes like this one on wind power.
We don't do wind because wind is a disaster. It's a very expensive joke, frankly.
Did his chats with the king stray into this terrain? Generally, this was President Trump on best behaviour. Any jabs he might have been tempted to make were delivered by the supportive US media.
I would love to call a few of them. Bev, do you want to have a question?
I've got to come back to you.
Bev Turner, GB News. Having been in DC for a few weeks, it's really interesting to see how you run the country as a proud Christian leader. And it really begs the question to the Prime Minister, if you don't mind, are we still a Christian country? But also...
when you say we, are you talking here or...?
Here. The UK. I'm still British. I might live in
rather
America,
have him
I'm still
answer
British.
that question.
But also...
I can't give you that answer.
In terms of a Christian country, I was christened, so that is my church has been all my life.
Keir Starmer is openly atheist, but yet again was straining to minimise differences. A week to the day since Keir Starmer sacked Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US, over his support for Donald Trump's former friend, the late Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump claimed no knowledge of the man.
Thank you very much. It was beautifully stated. What a beautiful accent, too. I'd like to have that accent. Thank you. My mother would be proud.
The elephant in the room, Lord Mandelson, he is no longer the ambassador. Do you have some sympathy with him that he lost his job over historic links to Jeffrey Epstein? Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know him, actually. I had heard that, and I think maybe the Prime Minister would be better speaking of that. That was a choice that he made, and I don't know. What is your answer to that?
Well, I mean, it's very straightforward. Some information came to light last week which wasn't available when he was appointed, and I made a decision about it, and that's very clear.
They left to applause from the Trump team and huge relief amongst British government aides. Donald Trump woke up this morning at Windsor Castle. At last night's banquet, every sign that the government's targeted flattery of an unprecedented second state visit had hit its target.
This was the second state visit, and that's the first, and maybe that's going to be the last time. I hope it is, actually.
The seating plan, a reminder of Keir Starmer's current difficulties. His chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, sat himself next to Rupert Murdoch, mindful of the role his papers could play in Keir Starmer's future. The Prime Minister himself chose to sit the biggest of the new investors announced this week, Stephen Schwartzman of Blackstone, right next to him. But his and other investments, like modular nuclear reactors, signed off in a deal at Chequers today, won't answer Keir Starmer's economic prayers anytime soon.
Okay, hold that up. Yeah.
Keir Starmer would love the investments that are being talked about this week, including yours, to bring growth just like that. He really needs it. But it's going to take years, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to take the next 3 to 5 years to bring those designs to market.
And Keir Starmer needs the growth a lot quicker than that.
Yeah.
This is long-term stuff. This isn't going to help him out of his current pickle.
No, I think we're all looking at this as a long-term opportunity.
The leaders watched the British Parachute Regiment display team land on the Chequers lawn. Donald Trump had rubbished British energy policy at the press conference. He'd urged military action on immigration. Any number of divisions was signalled, but not doggedly pursued. This was a tamed Donald Trump, tranquilised by pageantry, and a mighty relieved Keir Starmer. We got some familiar bits of Donald Trump today. He was boastful. He was talking about having brought peace to countries he couldn't quite remember the name of. He was madcap occasionally. He talked about trying to take back Bagram Air Base in the middle of Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Quite a tricky manoeuvre, I suspect. But he was generally more measured, and the government is feeling that it can pocket some gains from these 2 days. The movement on President Putin that we were talking about there, and they hope positive memories of this trip, which will lurk in President Trump's mind and mean that our voice will be heard more. But as you saw with that Peter Mandelson answer, President Trump's memory can be convenient sometimes. No memory of the former British ambassador there. This was Keir Starmer sticking his neck out at the beginning of this year by saying there should be a second state visit. And that effectively President Trump should not just be sort of buttered up, but dropped into a churn of butter. That is what we've been witnessing here. He hopes that his party, the critics in his party, will give him some credit for this all turning out relatively well. But the critics in his party, for them, he's seriously in overdraft still.
Gary, thanks very much indeed. Well, with me here now is Simon Fraser, former head of the Foreign Office, who is now chair of the think tank Chatham House, and in New York, former American senior diplomat Richard Haass, who is also president of the Council on Foreign Relations for 20 years. Welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Simon. I mean, the British public and many politicians are forever looking for that Love Actually moment where a British Prime Minister stands up to an American president and tells them what this island nation is all about. This was actually love, wasn't it?
Well, they got the love, yeah, but without the standing up, really. I think that you're right that the British government would chalk this up as a win. I mean, there were 3 things they really wanted here. First, that it didn't go wrong, that it didn't go off the tracks, and it didn't. Secondly, they wanted to wrap Donald Trump in the warm blanket of pomp, and
which
they did that,
did.
and he appreciated it. And thirdly, they wanted some bilateral improvements in the relationship, and they got that to some extent with this tech partnership and the investments. Although I think we need to look at the real content of that and see what's really new, as you always do. And on the other side, on the tariffs, I don't think they made much progress there. So that aside, taking it as a whole, they'll think it's a win.
Do you think it's surprising that they do seem to get on quite well? I mean, they are very different characters.
Well, they're different characters from different political sort of wings, but they seem to have struck up. I don't know if it's a warm relationship, but it's an effective relationship, but it's a professional relationship. And they've made that stick. And I think you have to say that is credit to Keir Starmer, frankly.
Richard Haass, if I can turn to you in New York, do you think all this flattery, which we're so very good at, is dangerous in the long term?
No, it's probably quite effective. Look, from the British point of view, I would say President Trump is not a problem to be solved. He's a situation to be managed. And I think the Prime Minister, with the help of the King and Queen, managed it quite effectively, despite a large number of profound policy differences in the Middle East, on Russia and Ukraine, on climate change, what have you. So again, I think this was a good example of an old-fashioned word called diplomacy.
And given the fact that there are still these fundamental differences, which they avoided fighting over in public at least, do you think that the mood music will actually last? Was there anything concrete coming out of this meeting?
No, there's very little that's concrete coming out of it. I think what lasts is the fact that these two individuals, the prime minister and the president, have a working relationship despite the personal and policy differences. So it means that Keir Starmer can pick up the phone and call Donald Trump pretty much at any time, and he'll likely get an answer on the other end of the phone. And sometimes, look, in foreign policy, and Simon knows this, it's not always what you can achieve, it's also what you avoid. And I think what was good about the last 24, 48 hours is what the two leaders managed to avoid, which was an all-out clash. And they've maintained, maybe deepened a working relationship.
Simon, I mean, on the really important issue of Palestine, the Prime Minister will forge ahead with his recognition, we think, of the independent Palestinian state. President didn't like that at all, but they didn't fight about it. On Russia, tougher language on Putin, but again, nothing really that's different. I mean, those things do have to move for the world to change, don't they?
I think on Ukraine, actually, I'd say that probably the British and the Europeans have had some influence on the American position. The problem there, frankly, in my view, is that American diplomacy is simply not thought through. There isn't really a plan. But I don't think we're so divergent on that. On Palestine, we are. That is clearly a difference. And Keir Starmer is going to go ahead with what I consider to be the well overdue recognition of a Palestinian state, and the Americans don't agree. But many other countries, like the French, the Canadians and others, do.
And what do you think, Richard? I mean, is that going to be a problem between not just Britain and the United States, but actually just for future peace in the Middle East, if there's ever going to be such a thing, that they just don't agree on this fundamental issue?
Well, in this case, the American administration is dead right. The British, the French, the Australian, Canadian position, I think, is truly counterproductive, which is the last thing the Middle East needs. It does a pretty good job messing up itself without outside help. What this shows or tells the Palestinians, we will deliver a state to you. You don't have to earn it. That is so counterproductive. It alienates Israel even further, but mainly it teaches the worst possible lesson to the Palestinians. So this is not a helpful European intervention, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, Simon, you want to jump in there?
Well, I mean, Richard's position would be credible if American policy had done anything to advance the settlement, but in the last 15 years or so, it hasn't. And frankly, the consequence of American policy at the moment is they're just saying to the Israelis, we'll stand by. They're saying to the President, we'll stand by, while the Israelis remove the possibility of a two-state solution. So I don't agree with him on that.
Richard, is the real story of the last few months, while Trump has been bestriding the globe and being quite bombastic, is actually American weakness? Because Bibi Netanyahu has done what he wants to do. He attacked Qatar, America's, one of his closest allies in the Middle East. He's not listened to, Putin hasn't listened to Trump either. So in a sense, despite the language, it's the friends of America that are getting it in the neck and not the enemies.
I wish I could disagree with you, but I can't. This president has turned out to be strangely passive when it comes to foreign policy. You mentioned the two principal conflicts where the United States has almost turned itself into a bystander rather than a participant. So as active, as assertive as the president is inside the United States, over 200 executive orders, you name it, in his foreign policy, he's leaning back rather than leading. And I think it's there I would agree with Simon. I think it's truly unfortunate what we're not doing in both of these situations.